Let me ask you something. And don't answer out loud. Just think about it for a second. Have you ever noticed how some men are forgotten almost instantly, while others stay in a woman's mind for years? I'm not talking about the richest guy, or the best-looking guy, or even the guy who tried the hardest. I'm talking about the man she remembers when she's alone at night. The one she compares other men to without realizing it. The one whose presence quietly changed how she sees men forever. Here's the controversial truth most men never hear. Women don't remember men for what they say. They remember men for how they made them feel. And those feelings don't fade easily. Now, if you're sitting here thinking that's not fair, or that doesn't make sense, good. That reaction means you're paying attention. Because once you understand how female psychology actually works, dating stops feeling confusing, frustrating, or random. Most men are taught the wrong things. Be nice, be available, don't mess up, try harder. But that advice creates forgettable men. Men who blend together. Men who are safe but invisible. Women don't emotionally imprint on men who chase approval. They imprint on men who trigger something deeper. Security, curiosity, respect, emotional tension, and presence. And no, this doesn't mean being toxic or playing games. It means understanding how attraction and memory are wired in the female brain. The man a woman never forgets isn't perfect. He doesn't always say the right thing. He doesn't try to impress everyone. What he does instead is far more powerful and far more rare. In this video, I'm going to break down the 5 specific behaviors that make a man unforgettable to women. Not in a fairy tale way, not in a movie script way, but in a real, psychological way that actually shows up in how women think, feel, and remember. If you've ever wondered why a woman lost interest suddenly, why she moved on but still checks your name, or why some men seem to leave a permanent mark without even trying, pay close attention. Because once you understand these 5 things, you won't need to chase attention anymore. You'll understand why it comes to you. He doesn't try to be liked by her. Let me say something that might make you uncomfortable at first, but stay with me. If your main goal around women is to be liked, you are already forgettable. Now, I know how that sounds. You're probably thinking, isn't being liked the whole point? That's exactly what most men believe, and that belief quietly works against them. Here's the truth. Women don't emotionally remember the man who tried hardest to be liked. They remember the man who didn't need to be. Think about it for a moment. When a man is constantly trying to say the right thing, do the right thing, agree with everything, and avoid any tension, what he's really communicating is this: your approval decides my value. And while that might sound polite on the surface, it doesn't create attraction or lasting impact. The man a woman never forgets doesn't chase validation. He doesn't perform. He doesn't shapeshift just to fit her mood. He shows up as himself and lets her respond however she responds. That's controversial, because most dating advice tells men to adjust, adapt, and impress. But from a psychological standpoint, what actually stands out is emotional independence. When you don't try to be liked, something interesting happens. Your words slow down. Your body language relaxes. You stop over-explaining. You stop reacting to every small change in her tone. And that calm presence creates curiosity. Women are highly sensitive to emotional pressure. They can feel when a man wants something from them: approval, reassurance, attention. And pressure, even subtle pressure, is exhausting. The man who doesn't apply that pressure feels like relief. This doesn't mean being rude. It doesn't mean being cold. It means being grounded. You can be kind without being submissive. You can be interested without being invested too early. You can listen without losing your frame. Here's where most men get it wrong. They believe confidence is about dominance or control. In reality, confidence is about non-neediness. It's about knowing that you're okay whether she likes you or not. And that's powerful because it flips the dynamic. Instead of asking, "Does she approve of me?" she starts wondering, Why doesn't he seem affected? That question stays with her. The unforgettable man isn't trying to win her, he's evaluating her, not harshly, just honestly. He notices how she speaks to people, how she handles discomfort, how she responds when things don't go her way. And because he's not chasing her approval, his attention feels earned, not given away freely. This creates respect, and respect is the foundation of emotional memory. When a woman looks back later, she won't remember every compliment you gave her. She won't remember how fast you replied. She won't remember how available you were. She'll remember the man who stayed steady, the man who didn't rush, the man who didn't bend himself into someone else just to be accepted. That kind of man feels rare because he is rare. And here's the key takeaway I want you to remember. Trying to be liked is short-term thinking. Being grounded in who you are creates long-term impact. When you stop chasing approval, you stop being forgettable. He makes her feel emotionally safe without being predictable. Let's clear up a big misunderstanding right away. Emotional safety does not mean being boring, passive, or overly accommodating. Most men hear emotional safety and think it means never disagreeing, never challenging, and never creating tension. So they try to be as smooth and predictable as possible. And that's exactly why they fade into the background. What women emotionally remember is balance. They remember the man who feels steady, but not scripted. The man whose presence is calming, but whose mind isn't easily read. The man who doesn't create chaos, but also doesn't remove all mystery. Emotional safety starts with consistency, not constant availability, not constant reassurance. Consistency in energy, consistency in how you show up, consistency in how you treat people, regardless of mood or circumstance. When your reactions aren't extreme, people relax around you. When your words match your actions, trust forms naturally. When you don't shift your personality to please, you feel solid, and solidity is comforting. But here's the part most men miss. Predictability kills emotional engagement. If everything about you is obvious, there's nothing to explore. If your responses are always the same, there's no emotional movement. Safety without depth becomes dull. The unforgettable man doesn't overshare. He doesn't explain himself unnecessarily. He doesn't rush to fill silence. He allows space, and space creates curiosity. This isn't about playing games. It's about being comfortable with pauses, being okay with not being fully understood right away, letting connection unfold instead of forcing it. Emotional safety comes from emotional control. When you don't react impulsively, when you don't chase reassurance, when you don't let insecurity speak for you, you create an environment where someone can relax emotionally. At the same time, unpredictability comes from having your own internal direction, your own opinions, your own rhythm. You don't move based on someone else's emotional state. You respond thoughtfully, not reflexively. That combination, calm presence and independent direction, is rare. Women may not describe it logically, but they feel it immediately. It feels grounding without being restrictive, engaging without being overwhelming. And that feeling lasts. Most men are either too chaotic or too predictable, too emotionally intense or too emotionally flat. The man who stays in the middle becomes memorable because he feels different. He doesn't create emotional highs and lows. He creates emotional depth. And depth is what keeps someone thinking about you long after the interaction ends. So remember this. Emotional safety isn't about removing tension, it's about managing it. When you can be steady without being stale, you become the kind of man a woman doesn't forget, because being around you feels both safe and alive. He sets boundaries, even when it risks losing her. Let's talk about something most men avoid thinking about, because it feels risky. The moment you set a boundary, you risk losing her. And that fear controls more men than they'd like to admit. If you've ever stayed quiet when something bothered you, agreed when you didn't fully mean it, or ignored your own discomfort just to keep the peace, you already understand this struggle. You're not weak for feeling it. You're human. But here's the part that changes everything. Women don't emotionally remember men who abandon themselves to keep a connection. They remember the men who stay connected to themselves first. Setting boundaries isn't about being harsh or confrontational. It's about clarity. It's about knowing where you end and where someone else begins. And that clarity creates a sense of stability that people feel, even if they can't explain it. Most men believe boundaries push women away. In reality, the lack of boundaries creates confusion, tension, and quiet loss of respect. When you don't stand on anything, there's nothing solid to lean on. A man who sets boundaries communicates something powerful without saying much at all. I value myself. I pay attention to how I feel. I don't disappear to be accepted. That energy stays with a woman long after the moment passes. There's something deeply grounding about being around someone who doesn't overextend, overgive, or overexplain. Someone who doesn't get pulled into every emotional shift. Someone who can stay calm even when things feel uncertain. Boundaries create emotional contrast. They show that your time, attention, and presence have weight, not because you withhold them, but because you don't give them away carelessly. This is where many men struggle internally. They confuse boundaries with rejection. They worry that speaking up means conflict, or that choosing themselves means losing connection. But the truth is, connection without self-respect is temporary. When you consistently honor your own limits, something changes in how you're perceived. Your words feel more intentional. Your presence feels more grounded. Your decisions feel more trustworthy. And that's unforgettable. A woman may not consciously think he had strong boundaries. What she feels instead is safety, clarity, and respect. And here's the controversial part. Even if a boundary creates distance in the moment, it creates impact in memory, because it signals strength without aggression and confidence without control. The men women forget are the ones who were always available, always agreeable, always flexible, until there was nothing distinct left to remember. The men women don't forget are the ones who are steady enough to say, "This matters to me," without needing to justify it. So if you remember one thing from this section, let it be this: boundaries aren't walls, they're structure, and structure is what makes a man stand out. He sees her clearly, without putting her on a pedestal. This is where a lot of men need to slow down and take an honest look at themselves. Because one of the fastest ways to become forgettable is to stop seeing a woman as a person and start seeing her as an idea. Many men don't realize when it happens. At first, it feels like admiration. Then it turns into overvaluing. Before long, she's no longer human in your mind. She's a symbol of validation, happiness, or worth. And that shift is subtle but damaging. When you put a woman on a pedestal, you stop responding to who she actually is. You start responding to who you hope she is. You overlook things. You minimize discomfort. You ignore signals that don't fit the image you've created. From the outside, it might look like devotion, but emotionally, it feels disconnecting. Women don't feel deeply understood when they're idealized. The man a woman never forgets is the one who notices her strengths and her limitations without needing to correct, save, or elevate her. He listens without projecting. He observes without judging. He accepts without losing his own perspective. Here's the calm but necessary criticism. If you're constantly impressed, constantly amazed, constantly trying to prove yourself, you're not present. You're performing. And performance doesn't build emotional memory. Presence does. Seeing her clearly means allowing her to be imperfect without trying to fix it. It means not agreeing just to maintain connection. It means recognizing when something doesn't sit right and trusting that feeling instead of ignoring it. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you real. Women remember the man who spoke to them as equals, not above them, not below them, beside them. Because equality creates safety without submission and attraction without imbalance. Here's the part many men need to hear as a wake-up call. If you keep shrinking yourself to keep someone impressed, you eventually disappear. And once you disappear, there's nothing left to remember. The man who stands out doesn't rush emotional attachment. He allows understanding to develop over time. He stays curious, but not blinded. Interested, but not consumed. That balance communicates respect for her and for himself. So if you want to be unforgettable, stop trying to elevate her above reality. Start meeting her in it. See her clearly. Stay grounded. And don't trade your self-respect for admiration. That's not confidence. That's avoidance. Real impact comes from clarity. 5. He leaves emotional impact, not just memories. Most men think being remembered is about moments, the place you went, the things you said, the time you spent. But that's not how emotional memory works. Women don't hold on to details the way men often assume. What stays is the state they were in when they were with you, how their body felt, how their thoughts slowed down or sharpened, how they felt about themselves afterward. This is where many men lose impact without realizing it. If your presence creates anxiety, pressure, or uncertainty about your intentions, that feeling lingers, even if everything else was fine. On the other hand, if your presence creates calm, confidence, and emotional clarity, that impression lasts long after the interaction ends. The man a woman never forgets doesn't force emotion. He allows it. He doesn't try to impress with stories or intensity. He doesn't chase reactions. He understands that emotional impact comes from how he shows up. When you're grounded in yourself, people feel it. Your voice slows. Your attention becomes intentional. You're not scanning for approval or looking for cues to adjust yourself. That steadiness communicates something powerful without words. Emotional impact is created when someone feels more like themselves around you, not less. Think about that. If someone leaves an interaction feeling clearer, calmer, or more confident, your presence has weight. If they leave feeling drained or unsure, even unintentionally, that's what they remember. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being regulated. The unforgettable man knows when to engage and when to pull back. He doesn't overstay emotionally. He doesn't push for closeness before it's earned. He allows space without disconnecting. That balance creates emotional echo. Even in absence, the feeling remains. Most men focus on creating attraction in the moment. The men who are remembered focus on how the moment lands afterward. That's a shift in thinking. Instead of asking, "Did she enjoy this?" ask, "How did she feel once it was over?" That's where emotional memory forms. And here's the quiet truth. You don't need dramatic gestures to leave impact. You need emotional consistency. When your presence feels calm instead of chaotic, clear instead of confusing, intentional instead of needy, you become the kind of man a woman thinks about without trying to. Not because you demanded space in her mind, but because you earned it. And that's what lasting impact really is. The truth most men realize too late. Let me end this with a statement that most men are not ready to hear, but need to. Women don't remember men who try to be chosen. They remember men who choose themselves. That idea alone challenges almost everything modern men are taught about dating, connection, and attraction. You're told to pursue harder, explain more, prove your value, and stay available at all costs. But what actually leaves an emotional imprint is the opposite: self-respect, emotional control, and grounded presence. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Being unforgettable has very little to do with doing more. It has everything to do with being more stable within yourself. The men women forget are often good men, but they were unclear, inconsistent, or disconnected from themselves. The men women don't forget weren't perfect. They were solid. They knew where they stood. They didn't disappear to keep someone interested, and they didn't chase validation to feel worthy. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. And here's where I want to hear from you. Every man watching this has lived some version of this lesson, whether you realized it at the time or not. Maybe you were the guy who gave too much. Maybe you stayed quiet when you should have spoken up. Maybe you finally chose yourself and watched how the dynamic changed. Comment your experience below. Be honest. I read them and I reach out when I can. Because this isn't just content, it's a conversation. You're not alone in learning this, and you're not late to it either. If this video made you uncomfortable, that's a sign you're paying attention. And attention is where change begins. Choose yourself first, and let the rest respond.